Hey there, welcome back to Creepy Encounters. In today's video, please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos. What's a horrifying/creepy experience you have lived through? Serious. When I was maybe 19 or 20, I nearly got run off the road on my way home from work one night. No actual accident, but it shook me up, so I pulled off on the shoulder to calm down before continuing to drive. A windowless van pulled up behind me and a man got out and approached my car. He asked if I was okay, and I told him I was fine, just gathering myself after a scare. He offered for me to wait in the van with his wife and kids. He insisted multiple times that I get in his van. Luckily my door was already locked and I had only cracked the window to speak with him. Since he parked his van right behind me and I could see in my rear view there were no visible passengers in his van. I was once at my girlfriend's townhouse and they had a backyard with a shared fence with a family, or group of families. It was dark night, but one of those nights when the light of the town reflects off of the clouds, so it's eerily light out. The fence between the townhome and the family house was old and worn out, so you could see through the gaps if you really focused. We heard a blood-curdling scream "no," followed by an immediate soul-crushing inhale. There was probably 50 feet between the glass sliding door we were at and the fence. They had their floodlights on, and it illuminated the silhouettes of the parents crying. Peering through the fence 50 feet away, you could see a body swaying from the tree. Their son had hung himself and discovered it in the dead of night when their dog ran out to the backyard and activated the floodlights. We could only see through the small gaps in the fence and the shadows of the family experiencing it in real time. Still gives me chills every time I think about it. One night of college, I heard a woman screaming for help. I looked out my window and saw her right next to the street. Keep in mind this is a popular college town and the street was busy and there didn't seem to be anything immediately attacking or endangering her. After a few minutes I was about to go down when a car pulled up and 3 guys got out. I could overhear the convo since it was right out of my bedroom, but she said no one was paying attention and they should try some other apartment. They all jumped in and drove off. A month later an apartment got broken into and 4 people were caught, 1 woman and 3 men. Apparently she was in the house and left the door unlocked, and the men then came in and robbed the place. Nothing to do with paranormal or anything, but it was an experience I had while living with my father, who was a recovering hardcore alcoholic. My whole life knowing him, he's been on hard liquor and had troubles quitting. He would often get put into rehab and I'd be sent off to different caretakers. Some were pretty abusive. So in an attempt to keep me from being sent back to the abusers, he tried quitting without rehab. He also worked at a Salvation Army, so if he got caught drinking he'd be fired or something like that. He lied a lot, so I never bothered asking. This was the first time I ever seen someone have serious withdrawals and didn't understand what was happening at the time. The first stage, we were eating at an event held by the Salvation Army with other recovering addicts, and he couldn't get the food into his mouth. His hands were shaking so bad he just left his food alone after several attempts. He was very irritable while sober, and it only got worse. The second stage, I was woken by him talking to the neighbor for a very long time. He held a full-blown conversion, but nobody was there. I rolled over and asked him who he was talking to, and he said Carol, who was our next door neighbor. At first I thought he was on the phone, but he wasn't. The third stage was by far the one of the worst. We were sitting outside late at night by the apartment swimming pool and my dad was looking at the trees. I said, "Do you see them?" "See what?" I asked. "The bobcats in the trees." He was literally having hallucinations and was serious about it. He saw other stuff too, but that's all I remembered out of it. The final straw was one day he decided to hop on my bike to grab something from the store on morning. He made it about 20 feet from the front door on the bike and fell over and knocked himself out cold on some stairs. I was too scared to come outside. Residents of the complex helped him out. He was totally out of it, had no idea what was going on. I was only 15 and never seen my dad act this way or get hurt even. He was a mathematical genius, an electrician journeyman, and seeing him go through all of this was horrific. He was sent to the hospital for a long time and I had to stay with a friend. My dad kept drinking after that and ended up passing away 7 years later from liver and kidney failure. I've seen a lot since I used to live in a bad part of town, but the one that really stood out was when one of the wiremen was literally burned into a crisp. We were at the church next door, which was at the 2nd floor and had a big window. From the back you could see the wireman doing something, but then suddenly he grabbed hold on a live wire. He tensed up, started shaking, and he couldn't let go. People tried getting him down using wooden sticks, but it only caused him to fall down, still clinging on the live wire. I didn't see anything else after him falling down, but our neighbors said his clothes were burned off and he was literally charred and unrecognizable. This was 7th or 8th grade. School just got out and it was raining hard. I walked over to a church parking lot adjacent to the school where my mom usually picked me up. There were several other people that picked up from there, but my mom's car wasn't in the usual spot, so I stood in place and texted her to see where she was. Some guy grabs my attention by asking if I'd like to get into his van to get out of the rain. Never seen the guy, no kids in the van. I obviously declined and said I was okay. He asked again and I said no, walking away, at which then my mom texted me telling me where she was. I probably should have done something, but my mom's car was pretty far away from his and he could have already left. I don't know if anything would have actually happened, but you don't ask some kid you don't know to hop in the front seat of your van. At that point I lived in a safe area. No kids were reported missing, so obviously nobody fell for it. The school he was waiting outside of was a 7th-12th grade charter. It wasn't that horrifying, just really unnerving, and I used to think about the what ifs because I didn't alert somebody that this guy was being weird. When I was 19 I was 7 months pregnant with my oldest daughter. I still lived with my parents and came home after work around 11:30 p.m. I usually checked that the vehicles were locked before going inside. But this night I was overcome with a sense of immense fear. I wouldn't even look towards my parents' vehicles and hurried into the house. 20 minutes later a guy is knocking on our door telling us that my parents' SUV was on fire and to get out of the house, saving our lives, and we called 911. There was a serial arsonist on the loose in our town, and when he was caught and he confessed, he admitted to watching me come home that night and how he was preparing to hurt me in case I had caught him, but I never looked over his direction as he was sitting in my parents' SUV when I had arrived home. It took years before I was able to be out at night alone. I was home alone for the weekend when I was in high school, which was exciting for me as I never really had the house to myself ever. I had a few people over the Friday night and got hammered, then the next night it was just me home alone in my house. I had a case of beers left over and had a movie to watch, so I decided that the hangover would not keep me down and to party by myself and have an awesome night. I ended up getting way too drunk and felt hungry. I decided to cook a mad feed and started whipping up a pasta in a drunken slur. I was singing like a maniac while I played MasterChef in my kitchen thinking I was top shit. Halfway through singing and stirring the pasta sauce I hear a tapping sound and some movement in the corner of my eye catches my attention. One of the metal chain ropes used to pull the blinds up and down on the glass doors was moving and hitting the glass door, making a tapping sound. I froze as I watched it moving back and forth by itself. Then my focus kind of zoomed out as I realized that that was not the only metal blind ropes that were moving. We have around 7 sets of blinds on the glass doors and all 7 of the ropes were moving back and forth. My hair stood up and I walked out of the kitchen as all of them were tapping on the glass doors. No windows or doors in the house were open and they were picking up momentum, with the tapping becoming louder and more frequently. I turned around just in time to see the DVD case of the movie I was watching slide off the TV cabinet on its own. I let out a slurred furic tot and went to bolt outside, just freaking out. On the way out I saw the painting next to the front door. It had been moved and was tilted. I let out a gasp. I ran out the door and wet myself just a little in the process. Shit was real, the horror was real, this was real. Outside I was so distraught and horrified at what had just happened. My house was haunted. There was a fucking ghost and it was fucking with me. It didn't like me. I realized that I had left the stove on and that I needed to leave, but needed to grab my phone to call someone and get out of there. I decided I would go to the park and try to contact a friend. So I psyched myself up, ran into the house, turned off the stove shitting myself, ran into my room, grabbed the key, my phone and 10 beers. I headed to the park and started drinking again. No one picked up as everyone was wiped out from the night before. Cut a long story short, I vaguely remember being at the park before I blacked out, then in my kitchen crying at some point, then blank. The next day I woke up in my bed. I wondered whether it was just a dream, but I walked out and saw the pasta and DVD case and realized that it was legit. I realized that I had to break the news to my family later that day that our house was haunted and that we would have to move. I went on Facebook and that's when I saw status after status saying that there had been a minor earthquake during the night. Needless to say, I felt like a hungover idiot, but the truth is that was the first earthquake I had experienced, and we don't get earthquakes where I live. Or not usually, at least. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more real-life creepy encounters around the world. See you in the next video. Bye.